Right. We'll start with our usual prayer. Om Yo Brahmanam Vitadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedamscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tamhadevam Atmabuddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha, Gurave Sarvalokanam, Bhishaje Bhavaroginam, Nidhaye Sarvavidyanam, Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Okay, so we have the sixth session today, sixth week, and so after this week session, there will be a break, and we'll meet only in September. So I thought I'll, um, you know, do some kind of a logical conclusion today with some key lessons or key, shall we say, teachings. So far, what we have seen is we have seen the Panchakosha, the three Sharirams. Then we last week we talked about dependent existence and independent existence. Before that, we talked about the original consciousness and the reflected consciousness. So we have had some kind of an islands of concepts, and I thought today I will bring all of them together and tie them up and try to give a big picture, maybe a glimpse of the big picture, because the big picture can be analyzed and explained in great elaborate details, and that will take a lot of more lectures. But I thought today I will at least show you in summary or in a brief way what that big picture is. Okay, so to continue with the discussion on the dependent existence and independent existence, which we discussed last week. So I was telling that Brahman or Chaitanyam, or what we call the infinite consciousness, original consciousness, cosmic consciousness, whatever name you give, that has an independent existence, but it cannot perform any action. And then we have this Maya, which, if you remember in the very first class, I said that all material entities that you see in this universe, all of them originate from this Maya. I also used the word Prakriti and Pradhanam. Okay. And if you remember, this whole Vedanta session is titled Advaitam. And what does Advaitam mean? Advaitam means the one without a second. Dvaitam means duality. And in Vedanta, we use the word Dvaitam to actually imply multiplicity. It is not just two items, it is more than one item is Dvaitam. So even 3, 4, 5 things, 6 things could be brought under Dvaitam. Okay. So after all these 6 weeks of discussion or 5 weeks of discussion, we are still left with two entities. So we have a Prakriti, which is responsible for all the materialistic things, and we have Purusha or a Brahman or Chaitanyam, which is the consciousness. So when we are left with two things, how are we talking about Advaitam? Yeah, so that is the tying together that I want to do today. So in the last class itself, last week itself, towards the end, I gave you this sentence that Prakriti does not have an independent existence. Okay, that should have given you a clue. So even though there is Chaitanyam and Maya or Prakriti, they are not really two real things. There is one real thing and there is one dependent thing. Okay, so how do you understand this? I can give you a few examples. Let's say you go to a restaurant. Yeah, you go to a restaurant and you choose a table and sit and you want to order something, and then next to your seat there is a mirror on the wall. No, in many of these restaurants you have this mirror. Sometimes you have a mirror on both sides. Okay, imagine you have one side mirror and you have your reflection on the mirror. Okay, now the waiter comes and you have to order your eatables or drinks or whatever. You would order for yourself. I don't think you will order two sets of drinks or eatables, one for you and one for your reflection. Yeah, because the reflection is there but it doesn't count as real. Okay, or another example, we all have this common experience. You walk in the sun and you have your shadow that follows you. Yeah, if it is sunny enough you will have a shadow. And let's imagine there is a car or a truck that comes by. Okay, and then it comes very close to you and it actually runs over your shadow. Okay, so here, even though the truck runs over your shadow, it doesn't affect you because the shadow is not you. Okay, so something like this, it's exactly like that. Purusha or Chaitanyam and Prakriti have this relationship, that one is real and the other is less real. Okay, we use the word less real. So Prakriti is less real than Purusha. And here I will introduce another word for Purusha or Chaitanyam. It is Atma. I don't think I have used the word Atma until today, until this moment. Okay. So the word Atma in Sanskrit literally translated means the self. 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 Atma means the self. Okay. Now we understood from the previous classes that our consciousness, which enables us to say I, actually belongs to the original Chaitanyam or original consciousness. So in that sense, our Atma, really speaking, is that original consciousness. But because this is a rather subtle subject, the teachers try to introduce two variations of this Atma and call one as Jivatma and one as Paramatma. Okay, and we already talked about this Jivatma and Paramatma, but we did not use the words Jivatma and Paramatma. The Jivatma is nothing but the reflected consciousness that we talked about in the 4th and 5th weeks. That is previous week and the week before that. We talked about the reflected consciousness and how the reflected consciousness doesn't have an independent existence. The existence of the reflected consciousness depends on the original consciousness and the mind and so on. Okay, and we also saw that the activities of the body are actually more or less governed by the reflected consciousness, and all actions that you see are triggered by the reflected consciousness, which in turn enlivens the three shariras, the Karana Shariram, the Sukshma Shariram, and the Sthula Shariram are all enlivened or brought to life by this reflected consciousness. So this reflected consciousness is the Jivatma, and the original consciousness, which we called the cosmic consciousness or Brahma Chaitanyam, Brahma Chaitanyam, that is the Paramatma. But if you have correctly understood the concept of dependent existence and independent existence, you will then understand that really speaking, the Jivatma doesn't have reality. The Jivatma is less real than the Paramatma, and so essentially there is only one Atma. the terms Jivatma and Paramatma are introduced to facilitate understanding for someone who's completely new to this field of knowledge. But once you have traveled far enough in this field of knowledge, you should be able to appreciate that the Jivatma is merely a shadow or a reflection of the Paramatma, and the Paramatma is the only real thing that exists. Everything else is merely a reflection of the Paramatma. So that is the ultimate teaching of the Advaita philosophy. The ultimate teaching of the Advaita philosophy is, really speaking, this world is a reflection or shadow of the Paramatma, and all the different entities that we experience are all something like a shadow, play, or you can call it a mono act. It's as though God or Paramatma is performing a mono act play. Only here, the number of actors or number of players in the play are very, very, very large in number. And the same Paramatma is playing the role of living beings also, and the role of non-living things also. So it's a very powerful mono act play that you are all witnessing, we are all witnessing. Essentially, it is one Brahman which is appearing in so many forms. So that is the teaching of Advaitam. Okay. So I'll pause here, because I want to know how many of you have grasped this and how many of you have questions, because I'm sure there will be hundreds of questions. So I want to give a break here. I'll stop talking. I want the forum, the group to come up with their questions. If I am sure there will be many, and I would request you all to open up and share your thoughts. Yes, Raniji.
You mean that Jivatma, we are like Jivatma, na? Paramatma is the universal cosmos,
Correct.
and we are the reflection of the Paramatma.
Correct.
That means then normally if the shadow, if the car goes on the shadow or lorry goes on the shadow, nothing will happen,
Mhm.
and it is remains the same.
Yeah.
But here, like when we are it, it is happening, no? Where we have that something goes, it is same, that shadow won't, after going the car, the shadow remains the same. But here in our Jivatma, we face lot of things, and then
Correct.
we don't have, like, without affection, not affecting that, it is not there, no? So how it is, like, if it is like a shadow, then you must not have this pain or any other kind of
Okay.
feeling.
Sure. Okay. So before I answer that, I would like to bring in one more, cornerstone principle. I would like to say, in Advaitam, we give lot of examples. We give plenty of examples, and we can invent examples and give examples. But the purpose of the example is to demonstrate one particular idea. Yeah.
Okay.
Every example is meant to demonstrate one single idea, and
Okay.
the example should not be extended to compare with other scenarios or other concepts. Okay, so here
Okay.
the example of the truck or car running over the shadow was brought in for the only purpose to show that how a shadow, or how anything happening to the shadow, does not affect the real person.
Mm.
Here
Mm-hmm.
Whatever happens in the world, the Paramatma remains unchanged.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
thinking of Jivatma side,
Yeah.
but you are explaining
Yeah.
Paramatma side.
So
Then, okay.
the reality, you have to use the word reality as the
Mm.
operative word. And
Mm.
we already talked about three levels of reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about absolute reality,
Mm-hmm.
which is the level at which the Brahman exists
Mm.
or the Paramatma exists.
Mm.
And everything that you see in this universe, which is bound by space and time, belongs to a lower level of reality, which is called Vyavaharika Satyam, which is why,
Yeah.
when somebody asks me the question, why don't
Mm.
we talk about three types of reality and why are we talking about three levels of reality?
Mm.
There, I had insisted on using the word levels of reality because I want to say one level of reality is less real than the other, or the other level of reality is more real than the other. Okay.
Okay.
So, for instance, let's say you're sleeping and you're dreaming,
Mm-hmm.
and in the dream, you
Mm.
fall down and break your hand or leg or whatever.
Mm.
Okay? You have an accident in your dream.
Mm.
Okay, and then you go to a doctor and you get treated and all that, and then at one point you wake up.
Mm.
Okay, that dream fracture that you had
Mm.
has
It
not
won't be there.
affected your real body, right?
Yeah, correct. But emotionally, you will
But
be.
while the dream was happening,
Mm.
you felt the pain of the fracture. You had to go to a doctor. The dream doctor had to treat you.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's
Correct.
a different level of reality.
Mm. Understand.
Exactly like that, the reality that we experience in this world appears so real when we are experiencing this
Dream.
waking reality.
Mm.
But Paramatma is at a higher level of reality, and that Paramatma is not somewhere, it is inside us. And really
Mm.
speaking, that Paramatma is our real identity.
Mm.
See, all the pain and suffering and even the joy and happiness that we experience in this world
Mm.
are all a result of, let's say, our identifying with this body or mind. Okay,
Okay.
that is one of the key corollaries of this Advaita philosophy.
Mm.
Okay, so as long as you think you are the body or you are the mind,
Mm.
you go through suffering.
Okay.
And if you think, deeply, everything that you experience in this world
Mm.
comes out of a certain attachment or identification, either with your body or with your mind or with your intellect. Yeah. So I'll move on to Kishori ma'am. She has
Yeah.
raised her hand. So Kishori ji.
Just to clarify this example of shadow and lorry, in this example particularly, the person walking on the road is actually Paramatma or
Yeah.
the unindependent existence, and
Correct.
the shadow
Yeah.
is dependent. And
Correct.
that is why, I mean, some people get confused, but actually it is just an analogy.
Correct.
Whereas normally your person itself is a dependent existence because we are changing all the time.
Correct.
Everything that is a dependent existence is constantly changing, whereas
Correct.
independent existence doesn't change.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, that is all I
Yeah.
wanted
Thank
to
you.
just my
Thank you.
input. Yeah. Correct.
Thank you. Yeah. So Rani ji, coming back to your question. So whenever you hear an example,
Mm-hmm.
please bear in mind that the example is designed to convey a
Make it more
particular
understandable.
point, and
Okay.
after that you have to discard the example.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So as I was saying, all this suffering or all our pursuits in life are all motivated by our identification, and through the identification, the attachment that you have either with the physical body or with your mind, emotions, intellect, and all other aspirations or attachments are all secondary, which have their connection to the body or the mind. Okay, when we talk about relationships or friendships, those are all mostly related to this body. When we talk about our possessions or our wealth, that's also related to our body. When we talk about our intellectual accomplishments, that is related to our intellect, which is of course part of the mind. Okay, but if you recollect all the discussions in the previous weeks, all these things are not your real self. Our real self is not our body, our real self is not our mind, our real self is not our intellect. In fact, our real self is not even our reflected consciousness, because a reflected consciousness has an existence that is dependent on the original consciousness and the mind. But it takes a lot of effort and lot of practice to tell ourselves, to convince ourselves that I am not my mind. Very often it is easy for us to accept that I am not my body, but it's a lot more difficult to accept that I am not my mind. So that is the sadhana that one has to undertake. So I will now come to the sadhana part, which Vedanta talks about. There are three sadhanas which you have to. Yes, ma'am, Shvetambari.
Sir, before we move to the that part, I would like to ask. You said Atma is no, no. The Paramatma is inside us.
No,
No.
that is just to, shall we say, give you some kind of a relative understanding. You
Okay.
are the Paramatma. That is the ultimate message.
Okay. Okay. Then I have understood. Oh, yeah.
You
Hmm.
are in reality the
Hmm.
Paramatma, but very often
Hmm.
it is difficult for a person to grasp that teaching.
Hmm.
It is very difficult for a person to intellectually assimilate that teaching. There are a lot of emotional blocks. There are a lot of people
Yes.
who have been brought up on devotional bhakti and all that. So
Hmm.
they have put God on a pedestal, and they have been trained over several years or even several janmas on this dasatva bhava, that I have to
Hmm.
serve God and all that. So if you have come from that background,
Hmm.
it is a big emotional block for you to accept that I am Paramatma.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Yes.
so you if you are identifying yourself with the body or the mind,
Hmm. Hmm.
it may be easy for you to digest that Paramatma is within me.
Okay.
Okay, but that's an intermediate step. It is a step that you will eventually discard once you realize that if Paramatma is inside me, then who am I? That question will come.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
if Paramatma is within me, then who am I?
Hmm. Hmm.
And if you go through all the discussions we had in the last yeah 5 4 5 weeks,
Hmm.
you were told that even your mind is not you, even the reflected
Yes.
consciousness is not you. All that is left after that is your original consciousness, and that
Hmm.
is the real you. And really speaking, the real you and the real me are not different.
Hmm.
It is one real Paramatma, which sort of shows up as multitude of people. There are a couple of examples which even the temples show us to convey this message in a very subtle way. If you have been to Shiva temple,
Hmm.
if you go to Shiva temples, especially in the south, there is a Garbhagriha where the Shivalinga is kept.
Yes.
And then above the Shivalinga, you will see a lamp
Yes.
on the wall.
Hmm.
And then behind the lamp will be a circular mirror with
Hmm.
10 or 12 segments.
Hmm.
So it's a mirror which appears like a flower with 12 petals or something.
Hmm.
And this lamp will have one flame, and that one flame will be reflected in all the 12 parts of the mirror. Have you
Hmm.
have you seen that anywhere?
No, not that I remember. I've seen the mirror, but I don't remember these 12 petals.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the
Hmm.
mirror will be a pretty big mirror. It's not a plain mirror.
Yes. Yes.
It's not a plain mirror. Imagine there is a circle in the center,
Hmm.
a small circle, maybe 2 inches, 1.5 inches. And then imagine a circle which is about 1.5 foot in diameter.
Hmm.
And imagine there are 12 or 16 sectors
Okay.
of mirror arranged in a circular way.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can probably show. No, I don't have anything right now in front of me. But you can imagine. See, this is a very common
Yes.
feature if you go to the Shiva temple in the south,
Hmm.
especially in
Hmm.
Tamil Nadu. Yeah.
Hmm.
So there is a lamp, and behind the lamp there is a mirror. That mirror has some 12 or 16 pieces of glasses, and
Hmm.
this one flame in the center is reflected in all the 12 or 16 pieces. So you see 16 flames,
Hmm.
16 reflected flames.
Flames. Hmm.
That is a subtle way of telling you that there is one Paramatma, which is the original flame, and everything else that you see is a reflection of that original Paramatma. Okay. So
Hmm. Okay.
this is the message you get in the Shiva temples. If you go to Vishnu temples
Hmm.
in the south, every Vishnu temple will have one particular room where all the walls will have mirrors.
Hmm.
There will be a mirror room. I mean, this is available in many temples. I can't say whether it is there in every temple. But
Okay.
in every big traditional temple, which is 500, 600 years old, you would generally have one mirror room. Okay. And
Hmm.
in the Vishnu temples of the south, you generally have a Moola Vigraha and there is a Utsava Vigraha.
Hmm.
The Moola Vigraha is a stone statue. It's a stone
Yes.
Vigraha
Yeah.
which is never moved. It cannot be moved. It is fixed to the ground.
Hmm.
And the Utsava Vigraha is the Murti that one takes out for the Parikrama and all that.
Yeah.
So when a festival happens, it's the Utsava Murti that goes out of the temple, goes around the town and comes back. Okay.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
in this mirror room or glass room, a replica of the Utsava Murti will be kept.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, it will be in the center of the room.
Hmm.
And then if you enter that room, you will see the Utsava Murti in the center, and you will see the Utsava Murti getting reflected in all the mirrors around. The wall will have multiple mirrors. It's not just one big mirror on one wall. It will be different
Hmm.
small mirrors on all the walls. And there will be a
Yes.
mirror on the roof also.
Hmm.
Okay, so this is a kind of a subtle message that is being given, that look, there is only one Paramatma or one God which is real, and that one God manifests in various forms which are basically his reflection.
Okay. Yeah. Mm. Okay. And my next question was, if we have to understand that Paramatma is us, then how do I understand the concepts that you told me about Sanchit karma and Prarabdha karma? Because why is that then so important, that karma and I have to go through my Prarabdha karma or my Sanchit karma?
Correct. Very good question. First of all, the karma theory is an intermediary lesson. Okay, I'll give an
Mhm.
example again. I'll give an example again. You are constructing a multi-storied building. Okay,
Okay.
when you are constructing a multi-storied building, at some point you will need a scaffolding.
Mm.
Okay, uh, in those days, back in the days when concrete was not so advanced in its
Mm.
technology, even to create the roof, you would put a lot of wooden planks and put
Yes.
bamboos and
Mhm.
support it and lay the roof and then cure the roof and then remove the
Mm.
that's also a scaffolding.
Mm.
Okay? And nowadays you see the scaffolding on the outside, because you have 10 or 12 floors, you have to paint them, you have to do a lot of external work, so you
Yes.
create a scaffolding outside, and
Mm.
once the building is complete, you remove the scaffolding.
Yes.
So this karma theory is like a scaffolding. It is given to you.
Mm.
It is given to you to convey the lesson in a particular way. But once you have absorbed and understood the final lesson, you can discard the karma theory. There is a small utility for the karma theory, because when you actually talk about moksham, I have not
Mm.
really talked much about moksham. Okay,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
will talk about moksham, but maybe not in this class.
Mhm.
So what happens is, in Advaita especially, we have this concept called Jivan Mukti.
Mm.
Okay, Jivan Mukti means a person becomes a jnani and therefore he becomes liberated. He's a Mukta Purusha, but he still continues to live in this body. Okay. In the other schools of philosophy, for instance, in Visishtadvaitam, they do not accept the Jivan Mukta concept.
Okay.
They, in Visishtadvaitam or even in Dvaitam, one has to die and leave
Mm.
this body and this world. Only then you can think of moksha or mukti. Advaitam is the only school of philosophy which says that you can be liberated in this body, in this world, once you acquire knowledge. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
So to you know uh, to explain how somebody who is liberated will still continue to live in his body, the concept of prarabdha karma is important.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
if the prarabdha karma concept did not exist, the moment a person becomes a jnani, he must quit his body. He must be free from his body. That means a person will die
Mm.
once you become a jnani. But if that is the case, nobody will come for jnanam. You know, number
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
Number one, nobody
Yeah.
will come for jnanam. Number two, there'll be no jnani available to teach anybody, because if all the
Yes.
jnanis die as soon as they
Mm.
get jnanam, who's going to teach them?
Yes.
Yeah, so these are the practical and logical problems. So there is a concept in Advaitam called Jivan Mukti, where a person has acquired jnanam, and as a jnani he is liberated, but he still lives in this body. And that Jivan Mukta state is explained by this concept of prarabdha karma, because then we say that when a person becomes a jnani, his sanchita karma is completely destroyed.
Mm. Okay.
Once
Mm.
a person becomes a jnani, from that moment, that person's sanchita karma is destroyed completely. So there is no sanchita karma left. And any action that the jnani undertakes after acquiring jnanam, there is no agami. He avoids agami. So we talked about three types of karma. We talked about sanchita karma, agami karma, and prarabdha karma. So sanchita karma is destroyed. Agami karma is avoided. So what is left? Prarabdha. So
Prarabdha.
we say that the jnani will live in this body as long as his prarabdha karma permits him.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
but then
Yes.
we have a particular Upanishad called Mandukya Upanishad, and one of the acharyas, he is actually the guru of Shankaracharya's guru. So Shankaracharya's guru's guru, his name is the Gaudapada. So he wrote a commentary on this Mandukya Upanishad, which is called Mandukya Karika. And then Shankaracharya has written a commentary on the Mandukya Karika and the Upanishad. So in that text, the Gaudapada Acharya actually says that actually there is no karma at all. He says there is no creation at all. So that's a very advanced text. And if I talk about Mandukya Karika now, it will confuse
Mm.
everybody.
Yes.
But then there is a school of Advaita, there is a school within Advaita which says that really speaking, there is no creation, there is no karma. Okay, but we will not go there. Yeah, we will not go there, not yet. Okay, Raniji, your hand.
That means like one who gets the this knowledge or whatever it is, then once he finishes his sanchita karma, then once he dies, then he won't have
Not Sanchita karma, not Sanchita
sorry,
karma, Prarabdha karma.
this prarabdha karma.
Hmm.
After prarabdha karma, if he dies, then he won't have any another birth. Then
Correct,
it is like
correct.
he will be in Paramatma.
He will be Paramatma.
Ah,
He is
okay.
already Paramatma. See, the problem is
Mm,
uh, even to get this knowledge, you have to change. We have to change our language. So
mm,
the we will not become Paramatma. We are Paramatma. We will continue to be Paramatma, but this body is dropped.
mm,
See, as Paramatma, so let me
mm,
give you the other view. So, as Paramatma, there
yeah.
are infinite number of bodies which are already floating around.
Mm,
Out of that, one body is going to disappear,
mm,
but the rest of the bodies will continue.
yeah.
Yeah, but Paramatma is always Paramatma. No matter how many bodies come or go,
Mm,
Paramatma is Paramatma. So, for a jnani, there
mm-hmm,
are two options. You know, there are two options for the jnani.
mm-hmm,
The jnani can say, I am Paramatma and I have nothing to do with any of these bodies.
mm,
Okay? None of these bodies matter to me because these bodies are not attached or they are not affecting me in any way. Okay,
mm,
that is one way of of approaching the world for a jnani. The other approach is the jnani can say every body that I see around is actually part of me. I have to take care of everything.
mm.
Okay, so you can either disown everything or you can own up everything, but you cannot have a selective ownership. That is the condition. That is the
Ah,
condition that the jnani has to develop.
okay, okay.
So
The
this is
problem with
Deepa here.
yeah,
Sorry,
sorry,
sorry to
go
interrupt.
ahead,
So
go
does
ahead.
it all mean come to conclusion that it's all about self-realization, that we are Paramatma, everything is one?
Yes, that is self-realization.
Mm.
And I was coming to the sadhana part, so let me complete that, and you will get a better idea. Okay,
Okay.
so in the sadhana, there are there is karma yoga, there is upasana yoga, and jnana yoga. Okay, the broadly three areas. There is a karma yoga, there is a upasana yoga, and there is a jnana yoga. And I have not discussed karma yoga and upasana yoga. We'll probably do it in one of the classes in September. But what we are currently going through is part of jnana yoga. Okay, so we actually skipped the karma yoga and upasana yoga part and we jumped directly to jnana yoga. It's a little like you don't go through the bachelor's or master's course, but you go directly to PhD. It's a little like that. Okay, so in jnana yoga you have three stages. There is a shravanam, there is a mananam, and there is a nididhyasanam. Okay, so what is shravanam, what is mananam, what is nididhyasanam? Shravanam means hearing or listening. Listening to what? Listening to the teachings of the Upanishads and scriptures. And That is what we have done for the last 5 or 6 classes. So whatever I have talked to you in these 5 or 6 weeks is essentially a very compressed and summarized form of Shravan. So I have not really quoted mantras, I have not quoted this text or that text. I have not really gone to the originals. I have gone straight to the principles and given you like a digest. Okay. So this is the essential teaching, and that is Shravanam. And then once this teaching comes to you or comes to a seeker, that person gets a lot of questions because there are a lot of logical issues in understanding and digesting this teaching. So one has to resolve the logical problems that they face from this teaching, and that phase is called Mananam. So Mananam is basically a kind of a question and answer dialogue where you say, okay, I have this, I see it this way. How can I understand this in the light of teaching? Like for instance, the questions that came up for discussion in the last 10-15 minutes. What is this lorry running over the shadow? And then somebody asked, where is this karma coming into play? All these are questions. Okay. And there could be many, many more questions. A lot of people can't even accept the fact that they are Paramatma. They will start asking, how is it? I am identifying with my body. I am so small. Paramatma is so huge. It's infinite. I am not infinite. So all those questions will come. So resolving all those questions and being convinced, intellectually convinced about the teaching is called Mananam. So once you are completely convinced about your teaching, then the third phase begins. And the third phase is a little more complicated in the sense you now have to reflect this knowledge in your day-to-day behavior. And so the Nididhyasanam phase actually is to behaviorally adjust yourself and modify yourself so that you live this teaching. You live according to this knowledge. And that's a very long process because bringing about a behavioral change is the most difficult thing. And even to bring about a very small change in a very minor behavior, it takes a lot of effort. And imagine we have been coming through so many millions of janmas with a certain what we call samskara, with a certain attitude, with a certain conviction that I am this body, I am this mind. We have so many attachments to this world. And to suddenly drop all of that attachment and all of that identification is not possible because you still will have a lot of emotional binding, what we call raga dvesha. No, you have a lot of attachments to things that you like, and you have a lot of aversions that you have disliked. And then we exhibit tempers, like we become angry, we become disappointed, and all those reactions will come. And these are all emotional and behavioral patterns that we have to slowly overcome and change. And that part of the sadhana is called Nididhyasana. Okay. So, what all of you have gone through in these 5-6 weeks is mostly Shravanam, maybe a little bit of Mananam. And I don't know if anybody actually started looking at these teachings and started examining their own behavior in the light of these teachings. If that has started, then that is also Nididhyasanam. But then Nididhyasanam is a very long process. And ideally speaking, once you get the knowledge, you utilize the rest of your life to focus on Nididhyasanam. And there are a lot of ways to do Nididhyasanam. We'll talk about it. And there are a lot of texts which provide, a lot of shlokas, which are essentially techniques for Nididhyasanam. So all that we can cover in the sessions going forward from September. But today, what I want to say is, Sravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, these three together makes Jnana Yoga. And so to come back to your question, by the moderator. This once you get this knowledge, how do you live according to this knowledge is what you have to go after. I mean, I don't exactly remember your question, but I think this is what you asked.
Yeah, self-realization. So it's all about self-realization and implementing the Shravanam and Mananam, what we learned.
Yeah, so the self realization, if all of you have listened to these 6 weeks very clearly and attentively, I would say you have all attained self realization at one level.
Mhm.
You should all consider yourselves to be self realized people, but that self realization may not reflect in everything that you say and do.
Correct.
Yeah, so the exercise now is to go back to the teaching again and again and again and keep reminding yourself that this is my true nature, and what I have been coming along with so far is not my true nature. And so how do I, you know make this teaching come closer and closer to my heart and come closer and closer to my behavior? And how do I allow this teaching, this knowledge, to modify my attitudes? Yeah, so that's the lifelong process, and you can gradually become more and more realized. So we talk about, the word for a realized person is, there is a word there, brahmavit. Yeah, so brahmavit is one who has known Brahman. Okay, so brahmavit varaha, brahmavit variyan, brahmavit varishtha. So we have 4 levels. Okay, so this is just for your understanding. Really speaking, these levels have really no clear border. Where does brahmavit become brahmavit varaha and variyan and varishtha and all that? So it is just to tell yourself that there could be possibly some gradations, but really speaking, there is no gradation among jnanis. A jnani is a jnani. If you know 2 plus 2 is 4, then you are not in any way superior or inferior to somebody else who knows 2 plus 2 is 4. All 2 plus 4, 2 plus 2 is 4 is knowledge is the same in everybody. Similarly, once you have understood that I am none other than Brahman, you are no different from another Brahman or another jnani. But then the gradation is more to measure how your behavior reflects your knowledge. Somebody may be knowledgeable, but their behavior may not reflect their knowledge at all. And somebody else may be knowledgeable, and their behavior and talks and walks will probably reflect their knowledge a lot more closely. So from a behavioral point of view, you can talk about a brahmavit varaha, brahmavit variyan, brahmavit varishtaha. But from a knowledge content itself, there is no gradation, there is no taratamya. Okay, any questions? How do I understand this silence? Is it a silence of astonishment, or is it a silence of not understanding anything?
See, actually, if I may summarize this, unless what one has understood that we are nothing but the Brahman, unless it is manifested in your day to day life, it has to manifest that samatva buddhi, because we say that we are all a part of Brahman. That means we are all the same, no matter who it is.
Okay,
And that,
one small correction.
yeah,
We are all part of Brahman is actually not Advaitam.
not part of, we are Brahman itself, not part
Yeah,
of Brahman, but
yeah.
we are
We are
Brahman
all
itself.
identical with
Yeah,
Brahman. That's the
identical,
better way.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, as
And
you said,
that will come from Shravana Madana Mananam and Nididhyasanam. Yes.
correct. So Nididhyasanam is basically to align your behavior with your knowledge, align
Exactly.
your attitude with
Yes.
your knowledge. So
And that
if the,
and
yeah,
and
go ahead.
that is why one can say that we talk about Advaita, but there might be many people who may not be able to talk about Advaita, but their behavior manifests that they have realized it.
Could
Their
be,
behavior
could be,
is,
could
yeah,
be, could be,
yeah,
very
yeah,
much. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So whether a person talks about Advaita or not,
yeah,
the important thing is to know this fact.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So I thought, I'll stop here for this week because I wanted to bring some kind of a, yeah, as I said, milestone conclusion. I wanted to tie up all
Yes.
those little pieces that I had shared over the last 5 weeks.
Mhm.
And so now you probably have a bigger picture, you have a complete picture, and we can now, it's like, creating a painting. You probably now have an outline, and then in the future sessions in September onwards, we can probably enrich the outline and put more color and more shades and make it rich and beautiful and so on. So that's probably what we will try to do from September. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for all
Thank
your
you,
Thank
Vasudevendra.
you.
patient participation.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So can
Yeah.
we conclude with a prayer, or does anyone want to say anything?
No.
Anyone wants to speak? No? Okay. Then we will close the session with our usual closing prayers. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate Sarvesham Swastirbhavatu Sarvesham Shantirbhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarvepi Sukhinas Santu Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay. Thank you so much. We will
Thank
meet
you.
in September.
Yeah. Yeah.